Hey, thanks for tuning into my podcast. This is Big Head on the Block, hosted by me, Tim Henderson, aka Big Head. Hey, welcome back to Big Head on the Block. Today we're going to focus on season 3. Our first guest is going to be James Abram. Welcome, James.
Hey, man. How you doing, Tim?
I'm doing good, man. So season 3, we're going to focus on locked up. We're going to talk about people that had extended stay. And what I mean by extended stay is they were locked up for many years. We want to see just what the cycle was like while they were going through the process when they were in prison. And then let's see if they reoffended or if they kept on a good path. To give you some context, I met James, we'll just say about 15 years ago. I was on a call. Instantly, I liked this guy. He didn't have anything to do with the call, but he was in the area. I think you were doing security at the time. Is that right? Or were you just living there?
Yeah, that's correct. I was doing security. I was living there and doing security.
Okay. So, we had a call involving a shooting or something, but I instantly started liking this guy, and come to find out we had some mutual friends, and, we don't eat together a lot or anything like that, but I consider him a friend, and I've heard him talk many times about his situation. So I thought, if I'm going to put together a show dedicated to, being locked up and then making good, who better than James? So James, give us a little bit of insight about your upbringing and what led you to the first time you were incarcerated.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So when I was born in 1972, I came in New Orleans, Louisiana, in Charity Hospital. I came straight out of my mother's womb and became a ward of the state of Louisiana, which means I came straight out of her womb, and I was surrendered to the Louisiana Department of Health and Hospital Family Service Division. So I pretty much ended up in foster home. That was the beginning of everything. And then the Lower Ninth Ward being a real bad area, I pretty much went from foster home to foster home until I was legally adopted at 13, and then ended up homeless at 14.
Oh man. So the odds were stacked against you early, my brother.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about these foster homes. We see a lot of horror stories in foster homes. Did you have any good ones, bad ones, or in between, or what?
I think at that time, I don't know about now, Tim, but at that time, foster homes were like, the foster homes I was in was overcrowded. I remember, a few of them that I was in, they didn't have any more beds to sleep in. So we would pretty much make a pallet on the floor. And for those who don't know what that is, it's pretty much taking a blanket or a sheet, putting it on the floor with a little pillow. And that's the place where you sleep at. So as far as the whole good and bad side of it, once I started getting to the point where I acknowledged that, getting old enough to acknowledge that this wasn't my biological family, then curiosity kicked in at that point, wanting to know how did I end up here and why did I end up here. But I don't see any good or bad experiences in my life, regardless to which way it goes, Tim. It's always a learning experience. I always take something away from it.
Yeah, that's good. You got to have it's good that you can put things in perspective and not necessarily be judgmental. I know just from my experience as a police officer that some of these foster homes, it's really hard to manage these foster homes, or like you said, overcrowded and stuff, and the resources are really limited. And, it's good that you could come out with that mindset. So when you were 14, you became homeless. Give us an idea what that was like.
At the age of 13, my adopted dad, who I was real close to, died. I think that was the start of my behavior problem, because I felt like I lost a best friend. He was always, my best advocate whenever trouble came about or whenever I needed some form of guidance. So I kind of lost that. I lost that father figure in my life. And, at that point, just being transparent, I was angry at God, wondering why he would take somebody away from me like that, despite everything that I've already been through in my life. I needed him to be there for me. So, I started acting out in school and all of that, man. And I guess it got uncontrolled. couldn't be controlled anymore by my adopted mother, man. So she put me out. I ended up staying in a homeless shelter for juveniles, which is the Covenant House in New Orleans on South Rampart Street.
Okay, so I can understand. I had a grandfather that I lost when I was 14. So it's probably not as significant as the loss you endured, but it was something that at 14 I wasn't prepared for, because he was like a father figure to me. So I can kind of say that around the same age we had similar things that kind of almost started to define us and make us start thinking about stuff. Luckily for me, I never became mad at God, because I still had a family. My family dynamics didn't change other than that, but it was pretty hard. And most people don't understand that at 14, man, your mind's not fully developed. Your heart is still searching, and it's hard for people to move past that. So you said school, so you were still participating in school. Were you doing good, bad, other?
I wasn't doing good. My grades had fell off significantly. I mean, now that I'm older, I understand, and because I participate in certain panels, I understand generational and childhood trauma now. I didn't understand it back then because, like you said, I was young and my mind couldn't really process at that point the trauma I was going through. I had no type of coping mechanism or anything like that. So the only other thing that I did was, I started acting out, and that affected my grades.
Right. And you were in the ninth ward, and for people that don't, a lot of people that listen, they're listening from other states. A lot of people are listening from other states. So the ninth ward, even for people in Baton Rouge, as much crime as you hear that we have now, the ninth ward is known historically by people to be a very violent and a very disruptive area of New Orleans. It probably the most violent from what I know. Can you kind of touch on that?
Yeah, absolutely, man. So the part of the Ninth Ward, I grew up in the lower Ninth Ward across the canal. At that time was known as Baby Vietnam. As a child coming up, being exposed to a lot of what was going on in my environment was traumatic, and I couldn't process it. I couldn't process that either at the time when I was young. Even to the point where I saw somebody at the corner store from where I lived at get shot. Somebody shot this person from an ice cream truck. And I seen this guy trying to pick himself up like 3 times on the fire hydrant to get back on his feet. And being young, when he fell back down that 3rd time, I knew pretty much that he was dead. So being exposed to a lot of the gunfire and, actually physically seeing dead bodies at that age, it's like, how do you process stuff like that? But you living in an environment like that. So, of course, in certain situations, you become a product of it because a survival mechanism kick in. Do I want to be that person that's shot and laying on the ground dead? So a sort of a survival mechanism come in. So it wasn't good.
Well, I touch on that a lot in my podcast, and I touch on that when I'm talking about police work and intelligence and stuff. Violence among youth today is respected in education and secondary. And growing up in a situation like you were in, and listen, people, I'm telling you, I'm a white dude, and I can tell you wasn't too many white dudes going through the ninth ward and coming unless they was there to buy dope, because ninth ward was treacherous from everything I know about it. So you either become it's like predator or prey. You either become or you succumb, huh? I just made that up, but it sounded good. You either become or succumb. So if you don't become something, then you're going to succumb to the streets or to the injuries or to death or whatever. So I think, because we have become friends over the years, and I'm glad that you were able to make it through there. So tell me the first time, how old you were when you first got locked up.
I've been locked up a few times for, as a juvenile for little small stuff, fighting. One time I had it was an ice pick. I had an ice pick at school. I got caught by a counselor with an ice pick. I ended up getting locked up for that. Ended up getting caught by, truancy for skipping school, and they take you to the truancy center. And when they have to call your mom to come and get you. And of course, when she came with a belt. So I felt that all the way out the door.
Right.
So
basically nickel and dime stuff while you were a juvenile?
While I was a juvenile up until I made 18.
All right. So at 18, you're an adult. Now you're on your own. Kind of give us some idea where you're at in life, where you live in and stuff like that.
At 18, I was pretty much from, household to household, messing with different females and, still didn't have any type of stability in my life at that time.
What about employment? Were you working at the time?
No, absolutely not.
Hustling?
Yep, pretty much.
Okay.
Pretty much hustling, yeah.
House to house hustling. And when I say hustling, people, I mean, that could mean many things. Street people, and I don't mean like homeless people. I mean street people that are knowledgeable about how to survive. There's different ways and different mechanisms that you utilize to survive. It could be drugs. It could be stealing stuff, selling property. I mean, I'm not saying you did any of this. I'm just trying to give people an idea of what I mean when I say that. So what was the first time that so if I remember the story correctly, you had a stint in Angola and a stint at Hunts. Is that right?
So I had an stint in Angola. So let me go back to how this started when I was 18.
Okay, go ahead.
So I was hanging with, a couple of guys that I considered to be a friend. We was riding in the car. They stopped at an undisclosed location. One of them decided to pull out a firearm and commit a robbery. We all ran, and the police got called. And, of course, when they got called, it said it was multiple people that was involved in it. We all ran, and I was the only one that got caught by a police dog named Rambo. They caught me in a wooded area. After we bailed out the car, started running on foot. The dog found me in a wooded area. They took me back to the detective bureau, and they was questioning me. And they pretty much say, hey, man, look, we know you wasn't the one that actually did the robbery, but we know that you was with the person that did. And they kept trying to get me to tell them who did it. And, of course, not having any stability in my life at that time, Tim, and, of course, trying to go by this whole street code thing, I didn't say anything. So the detective was like, look, man, we got you. You was involved. We don't have them. If you don't tell us who was with you, we going to charge you with that robbery and every robbery that happened in that area. That's exactly what they did, Tim.
Well, and what he's talking about, we've talked about on previous podcasts. So what happens is when he says that the detective is going to charge him with every robbery, sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. It's called modus operandi. So if a similar crime is happening at a similar time, similar circumstances and stuff, and they catch somebody like they caught you, what they'll do is they'll go back and they'll get all the facts of each case and just say there's 10 robberies that are unsolved. They'll put all 10 robberies on one person. And I'm not a real big proponent of that because sometimes, even though it's trending the same way, it could be different people. So that's a big blow for you to absorb. So you didn't want to rat because you was a street guy, and the code is we don't rat. So you're a stand-up guy as far as the streets are concerned, and you're doing what you was raised to do because you don't know no different. And I mean, honestly, I commend you for not saying something at the time. As a cop, I would need you to say something, but as an individual, I can understand that you stood strong. So let's get back to what they did. They put all those charges on you. So what happened?
So they put all of them on me. Only 2 of the armed robberies and an attempt armed robbery and injured or killed a police dog because they say I punched a dog, but he was biting me, so I was just trying to get him off of me. But only 2 of the robberies, attempt robbery and injured or killed a police dog, stuck on me. So I end up getting, as a first offender, I end up getting 10 years for that. Now, I will say this much, full disclosure. I say this a whole lot when I motivationally speak. Looking back at it, if I would have knew then what I know now, I would have opened my mouth.
Right.
Because that 10 years, I didn't even do that robbery. And the 10 years actually, it's been following me and hunting me for the rest of my life, even in my adulthood.
Yeah. So, okay, let's just stop right there and focus on this moment. So, street code says no.
Yep.
You don't say nothing.
Yep.
In retrospect, if we got any young people out there listening, or if you listen and you are mentoring young people, James is telling you that he took a lick he shouldn't have taken, and that was 10 years that impacted the rest of his life. So let's put things in perspective. When y'all talking to these young guys that are out here doing this type of activity, let them know what James just said. It ain't worth it. We're not telling you to talk or not to talk. We're just telling you to think about it. And if your friend lets you take a 10-year lick, then guess what? He probably ain't your friend, right?
Absolutely.
No, okay. Did them guys ever get implicated in any of the robberies?
Not to the best of my knowledge. I was the only one took the fall for it, and the only one ended up in prison for it.
All right. So the 10 years, you sit in court. Did you have any legal representation? Because honestly, man, the public defender's office, if you're young, homeless, hustling, you probably didn't have any advantages of good defense attorneys. So tell us a little bit about that.
No, I didn't have the only legal counsel I had was the public defender's office. And the only thing that they was preaching was, even though you're a first offender, you need to go ahead on and cop out to this. You're going to end up with 99 years. So being young and not having any knowledge of the law, 99 years, that sounds like life to me. So I don't want to get 99 years as an 18-year-old. So I took the 10 years.
Right. And unfortunately, man, because I spent my life as a law enforcement officer, as a cop, and it was my job to make sure that we incarcerated the people who were doing things that was counterproductive to society. But the one thing I always believed in is that everybody should have fair opportunity to have a competent defense. And I see these guys like you. I'm not on a social platform here. This is just raw talk, just from what I've seen over 32 years. I see guys like you giving these ultimatums, do 99 or 10. Man, come on. Anybody who's in that situation going to take the 10 if they know they're going to have to sit for a minute, right? You're going to take the 10 because you're like, man, 99, forget that. So we need to do better at making sure that people have good legal representation, because you, in the first offense, given the situation, I'm thinking, man, just off the top of my mind, maybe 5 years, suspended sentence, maybe do 15 months, 18 months, something like that. I'm not even thinking about a 10-year sentence, for that. And injuring the police dog, I mean, you can't help but fight a dog if a dog's biting you. You're going to try to get him off of you.
It's just instinct.
It's sometimes the deck is stacked against people, man. And that's one thing that's always, and look, I put a lot of people in jail. I put a lot of violent people in jail. And a lot of them needed to go to jail, but the ones that didn't need to go, like you, for that amount of time, given the circumstances around what happened, you keeping your mouth shut cost you 10 years. So where was your first stay at? We call it extended stay. Look, we call it extended stay, right? Because it's kind of a crack on a hotel. Like whenever you go to a hotel and get one of these extended stay suites for a month or 2 months or whatever. We just call it extended stay for no particular reason, but it just means that he had to go to prison for many years. So kind of give us an idea of how you, where you went.
So I started out, they sent me to what used to be DeQuincy and it's now Phelps Correctional Facility out in DeQuincy, Louisiana. It all started there for me. And then I think I was only there probably like a month and a half. How I ended up going from there is we was out in the field one day working, and I'm surprised I didn't get shot. We was out in the field working one day, and while I was working, and it was hot outside, so I'm rapping and entertaining myself, and one of the COs called me the N-word, and I just kind of waited till he got close to me, and I don't know a lack of a better term, but I snuck him. And I started fighting with the CO. So, of course, and everybody put their tools down after he called me the N-word, and they refused to work. So we all ended up in the hole, which is like locked up inside a prison. And then from there, they called the Angola TAC team to come down there with buses, and they bused us all to Hunt Correctional Facility. I was young Tim. I was very rebellious, so I kept telling them not to give me a cellie. So I pretty much had a fight with everybody they put in the cell with me. And they stopped putting people in the cell with me. So on a Tuesday morning, which is ARDC, they come around and they put a bag in front of your door for your property, and on that bag is some letters, and my bag had LSP on it. So, you know, I'm young. I don't know what LSP is. So I asked what LSP was, and they say, look, you love to fight? We're going to send you where all the fighters at. You're going to Angola. Of course, I refused. Go ahead.
No, I said, okay. Because in Tuesday morning, when they usually ship DOC prisoners?
Absolutely.
Okay, because I remember that when I worked at the prison in East Baton Rouge Parish. I thought Tuesdays whenever they did DOC. And for those listening out there, DOC is the Department of Corrections, and it's governed by Louisiana, and they control all the state prisons in the area. So you got a ride to Angola, which, you know, everybody knows Angola. I mean, it has a violent history, and it just the mere mention of Angola to a civilian or even somebody in your situation would put you on notice that, hey man, it's about to be animal instinct, penitentiary rules, right?
Absolutely, man. You're in an animalistic environment, and you have to develop a animalistic mentality, because at that time in Angola, in 1993, man, it was known as the bloodiest penitentiary in the nation. So between the stabbings, the murders, and the rape rate, it was extremely high. So
you leave, you go to Angola. You told them you didn't want to go. Is that where you were getting at? I interrupted you, I believe.
Yeah, I didn't want to go. I refused to cuff up. I didn't want to come out the cell. So sorry to say that I wish I knew that it was a such thing as electric shields, because that's exactly what I got hit with.
Damn.
They came in there to get me. They maced me. They hit me with an electric shield. They shackled me. They cuffed me. And one way, whether I like it or not, one way or the other, I ended up on the bus.
Okay, so you're on the bus, but let's just go back to your mindset right here, because people think just because you're in prison that you're going to abide by the rules, or that, you know, I don't really know how to broach this topic, but let's say you still defending yourself from what you believe is going to make things even worse for you. So people can't understand, you know, why you would subject yourself to that kind of violence. So kind of give us a mindset. You in that cell, you don't want to go to Angola, which, look, I would never want to go to Angola either. I mean, I fancy myself a tough guy just like you, but Angola is not a destination anybody revels in. So tell us what was going through your mind in that cell, knowing, man, they fixing to put me in Angola and it's going to be a fight for my life. So tell us what your mindset was.
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, man, and I don't care how hardcore a dude is. If he tell you anything other than what I'm about to tell you, he's not telling the truth. I was scared to death.
Right.
Because I heard all of the stories, and it don't matter how much of a tough guy you is. You got guys that been in there for years, for decades, man, doing a life sentence. So you don't really know what you're going into.
Right.
So I mean, I'm being honest with you. I was scared.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just a teenager, and what am I going into now?
Right. And I tell you, like I said, you're not the only one who would have felt that way. I'm pretty sure everybody does. Some won't admit it, but I can't imagine that there's not one person that wouldn't be scared about that environment. So you thought whatever you could do to make your stand was more advantageous than being shipped off, right?
Absolutely.
So they brought an extreme amount of violence to you, and you got shipped off anyway. Which in the end, that's what's going to happen, people. You know, for those of y'all listening, I was a jailer. You can buck all you want. You can tie the bars together. You can, saddle up. Get ready, have your shank. But sooner or later, the people going to win, and you're going to have to succumb to whatever they telling you to do, because there's no way to win in a prison environment. Because if you beat one or two deputies up, they're going to send 10 more, 20 more. They're going to come with shields. They're going to come with, the little posse that charges in, and they got some big brawny guys out there that's going to come. So you're going to lose every time. It's just a matter of how long you're going to endure before that happens. So eventually you got shipped off. So you got on the bus, right?
I did.
All right. When you got on the bus, how you were shackled, leg shackles, what?
leg shackles, chain around the waist, and then handcuffed like that. So you can, you literally have to bring your head down to your hands to scratch your nose because you can lift them no further than your waist.
Okay. So you on a bus, and the bus is usually pretty filled up because we have a heavy incarceration rate in Louisiana. People, if y'all don't know, we got to come up with better solutions because we incarcerate a lot of people, and back then it probably was even more so. So on your way to Angola, you got a bus full of people, half full, or what?
It was half full.
Okay.
It was half because I remember them sitting me all the way in the back.
All right. Probably because they needed to keep extra eye on you.
Absolutely.
So you show up to Angola. Now we all seen these prison movies, and I love prison movies, and I love mafia type stuff. I love that aspect of it. Even though I'm a cop, that interests me. The motorcycle clubs, the OMCs, the Hells Angels, the mafia, these prison things. I've always been intrigued by them, and honestly, thank goodness I chose this path because I may have been on the same path you was on, if not. But let's talk about when you walk down the steps at that bus, and tell us what you see, what you're feeling, and what you, just kind of any insight you can give us.
Well, when you first come through the front gate, your first stop is to the right at death row. They call it CCR. So they stop you to death row. Everybody get off of the bus, and at this point, what they're doing is they're taking you through classification. This is to determine where you're going to be placed in the prison. Working cell blocks, general population, extended lockdown. If you have any enemies in the prison system, yada, yada, yada. So you go through that whole process, and you go from table to table for classification. But Tim, let me tell you something. I was scared to go there, but this is what scared me even more when I got there. When you're going through classification, you get to the table where the chaplain's at, and the chaplain asks you this question. In the event you get killed in here, would you like your family to come get your body, or would you like to be buried on Point Lookout? And for those who don't know what Point Lookout is, that's the graveyard inside of Angola for people that has been forgotten in there. They put them in a wood box, and they bury them on Point Lookout.
Yeah.
That scared the hell out of me, Tim.
So look, that's I don't usually curse on my podcast too much, but let me tell you, man, that's a fucked up comment that dude made. And they got to make it now. They got to know, because it's inevitable that some people are going to get killed in Angola, because it was a very violent, historically violent prison. So it's a legitimate question, but damn, man, I can only imagine how that made you feel, man. So yeah. So what was your response to him?
Call my family. I want my family to come and get me. Then of course they ask you who is the contact person and all of that type of information. But man, that was terrifying. Yeah.
So terrifying to know you're going. Terrifying once you got there. Then once you make it through processing, you get your assignment. Where did they house you?
They sent me to the main prison. I think they started me off in A block.
And that's the general population, right?
Yeah, that's out there. So I ended up in Camp J, which is like jail in jail. Like the next day, I ended up in there, and then I can get into why that happened.
Okay, so when you first went, were they just big open dorms, or were they smaller like 10, 20 man cells, or was it like?
Yeah, so it was 2-man cells. I forgot how many cells to the block. It was a working cell block.
Okay.
So it's right next to like Walnut and Hickory and Pine and Oak, which is the dormitories and general population. So it's a form of Gen Pop when you come out the field, because you own a big old open yard, just like Gen Pop, just like the domes. But and then the cells are open. So, but it's not like extended lockdown where you locked up for 23 hours and 45 minutes a day with just a 15-minute shower, which is where I ended up at.
Day one, you here, and then you go to Camp J, which is basically a punishment. What put you in that camp?
So when the very first day after classification, when they sent me to the cell block, to the working cell block, I got my bed rolled and I went in my cell and everybody was out on the yard for recreation. When the yard came in, it was a TV right in front of my cell. So I'm making up my bed, I'm making my bunk up, and this big old guy, I'm not gonna use any names, he started changing the TV because anywhere in the system, sports and news overruling the system. So he started changing the TV. And then when he changed the channel to a football game, he turned around and looked at me and he was like, "Oh, my bad, sweetie. You was looking at that?" And I'm thinking to myself, man, this grown man just called me sweetie. Right. And I'm a whole man. So I'm not much of a talker, so I didn't respond to it. I don't really understand what's going on right now. I don't know what his motive is. So my cellie that was from Shreveport, Louisiana, he said, "Man, you're going to have to do something about that or your whole stay here is going to be hard." So I don't know him either, so I'm not talking to him either. So let me fast forward to the next morning. He tried to spit on me too. And he missed, and I didn't even entertain that. But I need to weigh my options because this dude way bigger than I am. So the next morning came around. When you first go in there, they issue you some bro game boots. For anybody that don't know, there's these brown boots and they steel toed. So the next morning came around. They fed us breakfast, and then they called work call. So my cell is way in the back. His cell is in the front. I'm leaving off the till to go to work. And I'm about to pass him, and he have a red bandana in his hand. At this time, I didn't know he had a knife wrapped up in there. But I already had intentions on doing him something because the whole till got quiet when he called me sweetie. So I got to do something. So by the time he stuck his hand out, by him being bigger than I am, I just went under his hand and ended up on the outside of his body. And then when I punched him in the chin, he went down, and I started stomping him with the boots. So when he dropped the knife, so when the COs came, I got written up and they wrote me up saying that I was the aggressor and the initiator, and they gave me the knife charge, even though I just got there and didn't know how to get one, and I ended up in Camp J for 6 months.
Okay, damn. So, you know, we all see these prison shows, man, and I mean, that kind of just it falls right in line with what some of the things that I've seen in prison. You know, it's a situation where you were put on notice, and what your friend was telling you, for those that are naive out there, what your friend was telling you is you got called sweetie, and instead of you, if you don't do something to acknowledge this and stop it, then it's a possibility they're gonna try to make a punk out of you, right? Wouldn't you believe?
Exactly. Exactly.
So he's trying to, and you know, just for those who don't really understand punk, it's just basically a homosexual, because some people ain't strong enough mentally or physically not to be a victim. And what you did that day was you stood tall, and you know, you paid the price for it, but it was a better price to pay than the alternative, which was to be, you know, put in some pink panties or some shit for the rest of your stay, right?
I agree with you 1,000%, man. I'd rather take that ride to Camp J, man, and another grown man trying to sleep with me.
Yep. So now you're at Camp J because you defended yourself, and look, it's an animal instinct. Like everything we're telling you, we describe in prison for you, and we'll talk more about the stuff I want to get into at the end. But this man has to be a fucking lion. He can't be anything lower on the food chain than a lion, man, because if not, he won't survive, right?
Absolutely.
So tell us about Camp J.
Okay, so the violence didn't stop there. When you go to Camp J, a lot of people think because it's extended lockdown, you can't get hurt in extended lockdown. You've actually had people that's been tricked up to the bars and got their throat cut by a razor somebody took popped out of one of the little shaving razors and melted into a toothbrush. They'll slit your wrist. So it's all types of ways to get hurt. So I go to Camp J. You get an hour on a tier, or either an hour on this little small yard 3 times a week for recreation. And it's your choice. You can either take the hour on a tier where most guys do burpees and push-ups, or either run in a big circle on a tier, or you can do your hour on a yard. So when I went back there, this guy kept calling calling down a tip, asking me where I came from, asking me what happened and all of that. Because I had this guy that I had a fight with, blood on me, they got to come and take pictures. They got to collect your clothes and all of this other good stuff. So once they do all of that and I have my bedroll, I'm in the cell, I'm not responding to this guy. So they let him out for his hour on a tip. And Tim, I didn't know what was about to happen. He had no shirt on, a pair of boxers, a piece of sheet tied around his head and a piece of sheet tied around both of his wrists, and came in front of my cell and say, "So the cat got your tongue, huh?" And I'm ignoring him. So he leave and he come back with 2 big bread bags. So I'm like, what is he about to do with this? He threw the first bread bag underhanded and it hit the balls, and I had human waste all over me.
Dang.
And I had human waste all in my cell.
Right, yeah. And see, I've seen that happen in the parish, so I knew what term you was going to use. But for those out there listening that don't understand the violence and the way that you can become a victim, that's just something very easy. They'll prepare all this over the course of a day or 2 days or 3 days or whatever, and now he got somebody else's bodily waste all over him. So that's one bag. What happened with the other one?
Well, he threw the other one too. And then here's the kicker, right? I got other guys hollering down a till, telling me that I have to clean all of this stuff up before the CO come down a till. If I don't clean it up, it's ratting. Right? So now I got to put my hands in all of this stuff, even though it's all over me, to clean it up before the CO come down, even though it stink to high heaven.
Yeah.
So then after he throw the second bag, he leave and he come back and he have 2 big old D batteries in his hand. And I'm thinking, what is he going to do with that? He took one of the D batteries and threw it so hard it knocked the chip out the wall. He trying to hit me with them. And this was the start of a friendship with a guy out the 15th wall. And he was telling me to pretty much grab my mattress off my bed and protect myself with my mattress from the batteries. So then he went down a tier and started throwing batteries at him and started throwing human waste on him. So a lot of this stuff is not just physical when it comes to prison. A lot of it is mental gymnastics and in the cells, what they call psychological cell chess.
Right. That's just more to have to endure. And we wonder why people have such a hard time adjusting, right? From prison. So were you able to lash back at him? I mean, were you able to retaliate?
I didn't. And what I kept telling him is when I caught him in population, I was going to deal with him. But then the friend that I was telling you about was like, you'll never catch him out there because he's what they call a Camp J warrior. And that's guys that scare the general population and they'll never come out those cells. That's why they do stuff like that.
Yeah. I dealt with a lot of people like that. Camp J warrior, they bad behind the bars because you can't get to them. But yeah, they're not gonna stand tall when they gotta defend themselves with their hands or with the possibility of being hurt.
Absolutely.
So right now, man, you live in a treacherous life in prison, man. The beginning was so awful. I can't even imagine what what it's going to be like over the next several years, because this is a very brief time, and you've not only endured, but you've had to experience a whole lot of stuff. And what people don't understand, and look, I have some insight because I worked in a prison. And when you're in a prison for 12 hours, even though you get to go home, you're not exposed to the exact same things, but you see the same things. You see some of these things as a deputy. You have to try and ensure that these things don't happen. But inmates are slick, and they're going to do it. They're going to do it whenever you ain't looking. And if they do it when you are looking, it's going to be calculated. So, the ability for us to protect James as a guard is very low. James has to figure out how to protect himself because we're not always going to be around, correct?
Absolutely not. Yeah, you're not.
So lead us to the next chapter in this extended stay. What happened once you got off of Camp J, or how did things turn good, bad, or other for you?
Well, at this point, news spread around the whole prison what happened when I first got there, and how I stood up for myself, and how I got into a fight with this guy that was like maybe a size and a half to 2 sizes bigger than I was. So it kind of made things a little bit easier at that point because they realized that you couldn't just do anything to me and it was going to be cool, that I was going to fight back.
Right.
I've seen a lot of bad stuff in there, Tim.
Yeah. So how long did you actually stay in that particular, how many years or whatever did you stay in that particular lockup?
I stayed in Angola for 5.5 years.
Okay, 5.5 years. You got out just on regular 2-for-1 deal?
Yeah, on Act 138. I actually lost 6 months good time because somebody tried to give me a kiss and I kind of, accidentally cut him with a razor.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, I mean, it happens, man. You accidentally have a razor at the exact moment that somebody tries to do something. So, people out here that's listening to this podcast, you can sit in judgment of anybody in prison. I've seen, not to the extent James has, because he lived it. I only saw it. If you don't have the propensity to become extremely violent, you will be a victim. You will be somebody's girlfriend, or they'll steal your food. They'll steal your whatever little money you have. Right? Am I telling the truth?
Yes, 1,000%.
So when you see these prison shows, don't think that they're real far off from reality. Tell us what kind of trouble. Tell us what kind of discipline you were in, and give us an idea of what led up to it.
You talking about what led me to where I am in my life right now?
No. We still on lockup. You still in your 5.5 years. Tell us what kind of violence you experienced and what kind of violence that you perpetrated on somebody who tried to make you a victim.
I had quite a few fights, that's for sure. I think the only other thing that I did that was extremely violent was the accidentally slicing somebody with a razor. But outside of that, it's prison. So I had a few fights. I had one situation where I was in a working cell block, and then I'm from the 9th ward. My cellie was from another ward. We was cool up until the point his co-defendants came from New Orleans, got convicted and came from New Orleans and came up there. And one day I was working out. You do push-ups, you get up, do a few chain breakers to try to shake it off. And when I turned my back, he hit me in my head with a lock tied in a sock. Okay. And of course, I was leaking pretty bad from the head. He hit me in the wrong spot. He didn't knock me unconscious. So I turned around, and of course, we got into a real big fight, and I ended up in lockup again for that.
And when he says leaking from the head, he just means that he's bleeding profusely. For those who don't really understand the term, that's good. He didn't knock you out. So let's talk about that razor incident one more time, and tell us, because a lot of people don't really understand just how resourceful inmates are. Tell us how a razor blade can be made into a weapon using a toothbrush, melted down, or whatever you did. Kind of just give us a little insight on that.
Yeah, so they give you this little single blade Gillette razor to shave. Technically, you're supposed to sign a razor out and sign a razor in, but we had certain ways of getting extra razors. So I got my hands on one of them, and it had a new blade in it. So, you take something like a staple or something, you pop the blade out of it, you heat the toothbrush up, and then you smash the blade down into the toothbrush and let the plastic, cool off. You take some little thread out of your sheet, and you wrap it around that little area. You put a little heat on it again, and then the thread adheres to it too. So that's like extra stability, so the razor won't go anywhere. And then you take pieces of a towel and you create you a little handle, because of course, once blood starts coming out, it's very slippery.
Right.
So it helps to secure it in your hand. And then to conceal that, you just pretty much take 2 rubber bands, and it's under your sleeve, like on your wrist. You can just slip it right out.
For all those people that don't really understand, look, I saw how resourceful these inmates are, man. Anything you can do outside, they can do inside. It may not look the same, but I can assure you, they drink whiskey, wine, everything else. They have knives, they have shanks, they have everything else. They heat up Coffee. They not living like the free man, but they got resources or they're very resourceful and can get a lot of stuff accomplished in that prison. We all know about the black and whites, the tattoos and stuff, right?
Yep.
Or black and gray, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
So, these tattoo machines and everything. So you get out, you do your 5.5 years. About how old are you? And then what do you do? Because obviously you've received a whole lot of educational benefits from being in there. You've been taught how to lay bricks or do roof work or do something good, right? Amongst all this violence, right? So, I mean, I'm saying that in jest. I know they didn't. So you ill prepared for the real world now that you had to live basically like you was in a damn jungle, right?
Absolutely. So one of the greatest benefits for me was I never really wanted my circumstances. My circumstances was what it was in the moment. I had to develop an animalistic mentality because of my animalistic environment, but I never lost focus on the fact that I needed to, in order for me to survive when I get out, throughout all of this violence and throughout being into this environment where you always on alert, and fear losing your life or getting injured or having to take a life, I needed to educate myself in the process, because when I first went there, I wasn't all that good at reading and writing. So this was one of the things. I got a dictionary with a real good thesaurus in the back of it. I started teaching myself how to read well. I started doing a lot of creative writing. And pretty much started educating myself so I could try not to fall back into the same situation once I'm freed. One of the main things I had to do was take myself through social rehabilitation. And what I mean by that is I had to, even though I'm in this environment and it's a whole lot of negativity and ignorance, I gotta learn how to socialize when I get out with people on any other level but what I'm on right now, what I'm going through right now, even when it comes to having contact with any type of authority figure.
Right.
Because at that point, because what I went through with the police out there and what I went through with the COs in there, I started to learn that my attitude gonna determine their attitude.
Right.
So I learned how to humble myself real well. So in the midst of the animalistic environment and all of the negativity, something good came from it. Not to mention, Tim, I have real good work ethic right now. And I have real good work ethic because of that situation. Why? In the morning when they call work call, you up bright and early, man. You're going out there to work, at a certain time you stop, you take your lunch break, then you go back to work. The end of the day, they take you back in. You can either take your shower now or you can go on a yard, hit the weights and work out. So it taught me how to get up early, how to appreciate a job, even though in there you only made 4 cents an hour. But like right now, I don't have an issue with getting up early in the morning, going working, and I don't have an issue with working hard either. So it instilled some good things in me too.
This is a guy that when I met, I instantly liked, and we have been social, just say for the last 15 years, like I said. And the one thing about this guy, he's always been polite. He's always been respectful. Not as a interaction between police and somebody, but just two dudes talking, because we've never had any kind of formal engagement. I never had to encounter him in a police capacity other than on a friendly note, right? So the one thing about you is you always looking to improve yourself, and that's commendable because you didn't have every advantage. And the thing I noticed about you, a lot more than a lot of people. And look, I pay attention because I'm a street guy, man. I pay attention. This guy has never once told me that he wasn't successful because of any negativity in his life. He always stood tall and brought himself and elevated himself to the next level when he didn't have, he could have fell back and said, I was a product of this and I'm not gonna, and kind of just made it a reason why he didn't want to be successful. James has always kind of stepped up the ladder, the corporate ladder, if you will, and to whatever position you're in right now. But the one thing I always did like about you is you always try to help people, and you never let your upbringing dictate your future. And that's commendable because you can stop a generational curse right there, right? Your kids and everybody else involved with you don't have to experience the same things you did because you have elevated yourself to a position now where you a functioning member of society, you educated, you've had good jobs, and you've even had contracts with the police department. That's something that I've always appreciated about you, man. So just dude to dude, bro, you stepped out of a curse into an environment that you chose. So I commend you for that.
Thank you, man.
So tell us how it is now. James mentored people under. I've been in these call-ins where we talk to gang members and we tell them, hey, this is what you looking at. Let's get right. And most of them don't listen. And he probably wouldn't have listened when he was 18 either. But I commend you for always stepping out and going to these meetings and talking to these guys. And when he talks to them, he gives them real talk, just like he's doing here on this podcast. So tell us what you did to break that cycle and end it with you.
I educated myself, and then I had to learn too. I had to learn that coming into my manhood, I had to be. It was imperative that I knew how to accept responsibilities for my own actions without making any excuses at all. So accountability for me was very important, and self-reflection. So, okay, this bad thing happened to me, but what am I going to take away from that to prevent this from happening in the future? And this allowed me to never look back. This allowed me to not reoffend, end up back into the system, because that education was the key to me staying free, because now I could communicate with not just law enforcement, but if I'm going to look for a job, I know how to handle myself in the interview. If I'm customer facing, I know how to handle myself in front of a customer. I was able to shut, and this was fortunate for me, Tim. I was able to shut that animalistic mentality off once I left that environment and become civilized again. Right. I didn't end up institutionalized.
And that's commendable, because a lot of times people, they're not able to transition like that. But and this is what I've always believed, because as a police officer, you have to be violent at times too, and in prison, obviously you have to be violent for different reasons, or some of the same reasons, because maybe you attack just like a cop would get attacked. But I always say you can't lose your humanity, you can't lose your compassion. You have to be compassionate. And most of us aren't built as psychopaths. We just are a product of the necessary. We are a product of what is necessary to survive at the time. And if, as a cop, I'm in the middle of the street and I'm fighting two gang members, just making something up here. I'm fighting two gang members, and they starting to get the best of me. I got to fight harder, or else I'm gonna be a victim, right? Cops get killed with their own guns a lot. I can't let this guy get my gun. I got to fight. I got to fight harder. I got to figure out a way. But it's not anything that most people aren't really built like that. They become like that, especially if they're in Angola 10, 20, 15 years, just 10, 15, 20 years, whatever the case may be. But you was able to back out of that and realize, hey, man, this ain't really me. This is just, I was a product of this, but now let's step out and let's reinvent myself. And you did a great job of it, man, because look,
thank you.
The one thing I can always tell, and a lot of them young cops, they didn't understand this, man. We stopped the guy one time. There was three of us. I was just there with him, just shooting the breeze. I didn't really interact with the guy too much. But right before he left, right before they let him go, it was just a traffic stop or something. I don't know. But two of my cops were talking to him. I was observing, just listening, didn't have much to say. But right before he left, I said, hey, man, how much time you did in the penitentiary? And he said, 12 years. And I said, well, look like you got yourself on a good path, man. Good luck to you, because I'm always going to give props to somebody that's doing good. He left. I ain't think nothing of it. So these cops come to me and they say, obviously they call me big head. They say, hey, how you knew that guy did time? I said, there's a certain way that people that did DLC time carry themselves. And he said, no way you could have known that. And I said, well, you heard me ask him the question. How many times do I ask that question on a traffic stop? And they said, yeah, you're right. And he said, well, how'd you know? I said, I just know, man. I mean, I can't really explain it to you. It's just instinct. So there's a different way that people handle themselves once they've been incarcerated like that. And they were kind of baffled at how I knew. But, you would probably know similar.
Well, your level of respect go to a whole nother level, right, Tim? Because it's like when you in there, I'm gonna give you a perfect example in a dormitory. You got some guys they got to get up early in the morning and go to school or whatever trade they're in. You got some guys that got earlier job duties than other guys, so they have to get up real early in the morning to be able to go to go to work. So in the evening time when everything's shut down, you can't be making all of that noise and all of that stuff too, because you disrespecting a person at that point, and that'll get you killed.
Right.
That will get you killed, man. So you have to know how to humble yourself, and you have to know how to have respect for the next man. So that comes back out to society. Like, you carry yourself in a whole nother way.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And that's probably what you can identify is that from some of these guys is that level of respect. That's if they didn't fall victim to what was going on in prison and became institutionalized.
So before we go into the last segment, I want to touch on this. And I always crack a joke, penitentiary rules in effect, right? So let me know about race. Let me know about the white boys, the blacks, the Hispanics, the Asians, because they're usually very few of them. Let me know how the dynamics of that work. I know in federal prison, it's a lot more segregated. Tell me about Angola. Did the white boys and the blacks, did the Hispanics, did they intermingle? Did they have their own areas? Tell me how the dynamics of race worked.
No, not necessarily in Angola. In Angola, some of them intermingled. Unless you had a situation where they belonged to like Aryan Brotherhood or something like that, and they just didn't 1,000% didn't like blacks or no type of minorities, then yeah, they might segregate themselves. But as far as people who just didn't care, wasn't tied into anything, any type of gang, any race stuff, then yeah, they intermingled. They went to the law library together, studied law together, and all of that stuff, man. Even had conversations. So it's not as intense as you will find in federal prison.
Yeah, and I kind of knew the answer to that. I just wanted to get confirmation because I'm a student of prison documentaries and stuff, and I've talked to tons and tons of people because I've actually checked people out of Angola and had to arrest them for stuff that happened in Baton Rouge and then bring them back. So I always try to pick people's brain, to educate myself on what they feel. And the funny thing is, everybody to a person has told me that race was never a factor in Angola. And I thought that was really significant because we see in these federal prisons the extreme amount of segregation. Let me tell you, this is kind of on topic, off topic. I checked out a guy one time from Angola. I was with somebody else, and there was no reason to add this charge to the guy, but he actually committed the crime. So we went and picked him up, and we driving back. And I don't know that I've ever told this story. As we're driving back from Angola to Baton Rouge, of course, I'm hungry. And I'm like, the guy's, he's handcuffed. We got the shackles. We got him in the back seat of the car. We have to make sure that he's secure. So he got a whole lot of time. Probably was never going to see the free world again. So I said, look, man, we fixing to stop at McDonald's. You want something to eat? And, he's like, well, I ain't got no money. I said, well, you don't need no money, man. I said, I'm going to buy you lunch, man. Like, I know you're an inmate. So he said, man, you know what? I ain't had a cheeseburger. And he'd been locked up 5 or 10 years. I don't remember. I ain't had a cheeseburger in a while, man. I said, well, okay. You want some fries with it? He said, if you don't mind. I said, look, man, you don't, just tell me what you want. It's on me, man. If he was in my situation, I think he would have bought me the same thing. And I said, you want anything to drink? He said, nah, man, that's enough. I ain't going to ask you for no more. I said, man, you want a Coke? You want a malt? What you want? He said, man, I would love to have a malt, man. Would you buy me a malt? And I said, I'll buy you a malt, whatever you want. I'm compassionate. This guy did what, I don't even know what he did. I didn't care. I didn't ask him. My interaction with him was simply what it was. I didn't care what he did before. It didn't matter to me because that was not my business, right? So I bought him the food and he thanked me. So we had to, we booked him. Left him in the parish for a couple of days, and then next time we went back to work, we picked him up from the parish and brought him back. And as we driving back, I see him looking out the window, man, and it's kind of perplexing to me the way he was looking. And I said, hey man, why you just kind of gazing out the window? I mean, it was just something odd and unique going on in his mind, and I really couldn't figure it out. And he said to me, because he knew my name was Big Head, he said, Big Head, he said, let me tell you something, man. He said, this probably be the last time I ever get to drive by trees, I ever get to see the free world. And I was like, man, that's pretty significant, man. So we brought him back, and they asked me to put him in a cell because they didn't have a lot of people. And when I put him in the cell, we had created a bond over them few hours that we were together over a couple of days, man. And like I said, I don't know what he did. To this day, I don't know what he did, but I put him in the cell, and he said, I'll be seeing you, Big Head. I said, I see you, man. And it was just two human beings, man. So people think just because people in jail that they bad, but sometimes people do one bad thing, or sometimes people just have bad luck, man. And sometimes they're evil. Now, don't get me wrong. But But I don't know what this guy was, but I think I left a good impression on him, and I think he left a good impression on me.
Can I expound on that?
Go ahead.
So that good impression is very important, and let me tell you why. I was curious at one point what cops immortal, right? I wanted to be able to put in a position to be able to humanize somebody that wore that badge, to be able to humanize somebody that didn't even know me, but was willing to put their life on the line for me. So I was like, you know what? Let me just start holding conversations. That's the only way to learn, right?
Right.
Troy Lawrence, and I'm calling his name, was the first real interaction I had. And I'm not talking about the uniform at this point. I'm talking about the human being. I'm talking about the man. Was the first time that I had an interaction with a cop, and the cop knew my situation and just 100% respected me and respect what I became, not what I was, and treated me like a human being and started looking at me like a friend. And then almost 22 years later, consider me to be a brother. So what you did with that guy, stay with him for the rest of his life. Because for the first time, he wasn't looking at Tim Henderson, the police officer. He was looking at Big Head, the human being, the man.
Right.
That makes all of the difference in the world, bro. That changed my entire perspective. And right now today, the majority of my friends are in law enforcement to some form of fashion, from federal down to local agencies.
And listen, I'm going to tell everybody, listen, about James. James, you think that because he came from a criminal world at some point in time, this guy's pro law enforcement, but more importantly, he's pro the person that's in law enforcement. I don't know that he likes every cop, and I won't even ask him that because I'm sure he don't, because I don't even like every cop, and I was a cop. But he understands that there's certain cops that live a certain way and present themselves a certain way, and they're worthy of his time and they're worthy of his loyalty. And James is an extremely loyal guy to the person that he mentioned. If I'm in any kind of trouble or situation, I wouldn't hesitate to call him and say, hey man, look, I need a favor. And if he can do it, I promise you he's going to be there. He stands tall. He stands on his own solid ground. And that's ground he established through a lot of peril in his life. Now, you've been out for a long time. You've mentored. You've done everything you can. Tell us where you at in life. You don't have to get real specific, but tell us where you at in life and let these people know that have disadvantaged upbringings, what the outcome can be.
Well, where I am in my life now is real ironic. I actually design and build law enforcement vehicles. And the crazy thing is I actually do this on a federal level as well. So I do ghost units for like DEA, and I do ghost units for Homeland Security for the HSI, which is Criminal Investigation Task Force for Homeland. And so I'm entrusted to mess with those units. Yeah. I am now currently the director of Jerry Lane Municipal Outfitters. I am over the whole department. We build all of the state police units. We will be building the fire marshal and wildlife and fishery vehicles. St. Tammany Sheriff Department. Anyway, departments all over the state of Louisiana. I'm entrusted to mess with these units, despite everything that I've been in my life. This past Saturday, I spent all day at court at 19 JDC doing a warrant resolution clinic because I sit on a board of a criminal justice. I sit on a criminal justice board, despite what I've been through in my life. On this board, you have judges, you have the sheriff. It's a lot of different people on this board. So despite everything that I've been through in my life, it's all about what you take away from it. It's all about how you build yourself up. It's most importantly, it's about who you choose to surround yourself with.
Right. And listen, let me stop you there, because I always tell people this. All these programs they got, the one common denominator in people reoffending is they don't change their environment. We can do all we want, but if you leave somebody in their environment, right, the number one thing they're going to do when things get rough is to go back to what they know. And you are a product of not being left in that environment. You created a different environment. And so I want people to understand that a lot of these guys don't choose to reoffend until it comes to a situation where they don't have many choices left. Would you kind of agree with that?
I agree 100%.
Okay. Well, look, man, you've done, I think you've opened up a lot of eyes, man, just with your success. And I consider you a friend, and I consider you somebody that I wanted to bring onto this podcast because I've heard you talk before. Now, for those, I don't know when I'm going to release this podcast. So when he said last weekend, he's talking about early November and early November 2023. So I don't know when I'm going to actually release this particular podcast. So just kind of give some context of when we're talking. And is there anything? Give me just a couple lines to the young person that's in jail, fixing to get out of jail. What do they need to do to be successful? Just in your opinion, and you've already stepped out of the negativity into a good life. What can they do? Maybe not to the same scale, but what can they do to become a functioning member of society?
Before I answer that, I want to thank you for being a good friend too, Tim, and thanks for considering me for this podcast, man. I really appreciate that.
Indeed.
And then the only advice that I have is don't worry about what people think, because a lot of times you get caught up in your environment to the point where you worrying about what your boy gonna think, or you worrying about what some female gonna think about how you live in a certain kind of lifestyle. At the end of the day, man, you have to think about you. It's not worth it for you to go out there and do something. And I notice a lot of guys nowadays, I listen to certain things being said and they think they can out-slick law enforcement. Well, just like you get more strategic in your criminal activities, law enforcement get more strategic in their quest to fight crime. So you need to keep that in mind too. There is no win in this whole situation when it comes to crime. When you become a product of your environment, which clearly I can understand, it's going to go one of two ways. You're going to become a victim and end up dead in prison for the rest of your life, or you can become a survivor and rise above it like I did. To be able to rise above it, you have to first change your mentality. You have to change your way of thinking. You have to get out of that negative environment. Get yourself in a positive environment. Surround yourself with positive people, and good luck on your quest to become a better you.
Well said, my friend. We're going to end the podcast here. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Big Head on the Block. I'm Tim Henderson, the host. I look forward to dropping another podcast soon. Please give us any comments, likes, dislikes, or any topics y'all would like to discuss. Thank you.